minutes after 8, and it's time for us to get to the segment which we call Your Money. But today we're looking at your money from a different perspective, data usage. And I'm joined by Mark Kaigwa, who is the founder for Nendo, which is a digital advisory and research firm. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Happy to be here.
I think we last had you, I think it was around November, and we were talking about that data usage and basically how our data gets consumed. And sometimes we actually don't know what is consuming it. And Kenyans have this thing where we say, bundles zangu zimekulwa. But the truth of the matter is there's something that consumes that data. But before we get into the conversation, I'd just like us to listen to some, sound bites that we took from people out there on their data usage and what they're using their data for before we look at a report by Nendo.
This issue should be addressed because the way they are consumed, you are not even understanding the way they are consumed. They need to make them in a way that if you have bought bundles, they give you time, even if it means it is a whole month, so that you can exhaust your bundles. Sababu mara mingi unaweka hata kabla hujamaliza kutumia 24 hours imeisha, 48 hours imeisha na zinapotea. So tunataka wafanye adjustment kama mtu umenunua bundles, wakupea wakati wa kutumia mpaka hizo bundles zako ziishe. Vile wanafanyanga kwa airtime.
The managers of this company should do something. Maybe naweza sema kama mimi resident ama mimi mwenye nime experience this kind of problems, wakuje kuangalia kama ni system inakuwa hacked ama ni watu ambao wametokea pande wengine wako na teknolojia tofauti ambayo inachukua pengine bundles kikando. The managers of these companies wangeangalilia hili jambo sana, waone pahali shida iko, kwa sababu sisi wananchi tunaendelea kuumia sana.
Nilitoka paka kanda kwa customer care pale Mombasa, menifahamu, so kucomplain kwamba kuna namba fulani ilikuwa ikinituma message ukatwa mimi na hiyo message, na mimi sija register, sijafanya jambo lolote. Hata mara mwisho mimi nilinunua nafikiri ya 500 ambayo ni 1 GB nafikiri, na ghafla ikaisha hata bila kujua. Ghafla pesa umenunua, jua wewe utatumia kwa muda fulani, kushtuka ununua bundle na ikalika.
Usually postpaid customers since 2011. You can realize at the end of the month unapata bill ambapo kwamba you never spent that amount of money. Maybe a good example, there was a time that I experienced that nimewekewa cost ya kuuliza KCP result and I never did that. So that cost was included in my monthly bill. Na kuna wakati niliwekewa cost za kupiga international calls and I never made international calls. My bill came up to 14,000. So issue na watu wa huduma za simu na credit na airtime bundles kama kitu kimekuwa kimezoeleka.
All right, so interesting comments coming there, Mark, from different people in different areas. But does it, first of all, surprise you that people generally don't seem to understand where their bundles go, and there seems to be a disconnect between how you load bundles and where they go, and the fact that you've not used or consumed them, as far as you're concerned?
Thanks, Mike. I think it's not a surprise. I think that's part of what motivated Nendo and the team and I to create this report. For us, it was looking and seeing a landscape where, in our view, there's over 190 different mobile bundles. If you add up all of them from all the telcos, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask Kenyans to remember, to navigate their way through. And people know cash, people know airtime, people know mobile money. People know what it means to walk into a cyber, hand over 20 shillings and get this unlimited or uncapped access. In the world of our phones, this idea of this new currency, megabytes and bundles, that I have this much money which gets me this for that long or this for this shorter time, that we found is part of the challenge that we sought to address when creating the report.
So is it that Kenyans, or maybe generally, we've not fully understood the conversion of money into bundles? And in other words, when I buy bundles, what does that mean? How much do I have in terms of data time?
I mean, there's an increasing understanding. I think over the last decade now, people are getting the picture of what it means to have a gigabyte. There's a time that was a lot of data. You didn't know what to do to spend it all. And now there's a number of packages that will give you several gigabytes or gigabyte for 24 hours, if you will. And so Kenyans are learning that this is a currency to redeem, but they don't always necessarily feel in charge and in control. And that's part of why we created the report, to advise and share some context for us to understand what Kenyans are doing with the bundles and connectivity they have.
All right, before we come to the report, what's the basic, or what would your advice be when I want to get bundles? What is it that I should have in mind? Because one of the things, like you've mentioned, there are so many different variations of the kind of bundles that you can buy, and they should suit different people for different needs. What do I need to be critically looking at when I'm buying bundles?
I think the first thing, Mike, is you need to think about just where you are socioeconomically. You know, in the report, one of the things we look at is that people genuinely, in some of the more adverse cases, have even developed certain habits of avoidance with their phones, meaning that they actually don't fully use the features of a smartphone because they fear misusing or overusing data. I think part of it starts from just what do you have to spend, and what, you start from really that point. Next is what do you want to do. Now in between there is what your phone will do in between you and what you have and where you want to go. So you want to watch a movie, you want to stream something, or even this show right now is streaming on YouTube, for example. Right. If you get on there, it's going to consume your bundle, so you've got to decide how you want to participate. But for us, it's starting really with where you are socioeconomically and then looking to what you want to do. What we try to advise is that these phones are called smartphones for a reason. There's a lot they're packing, and there's a lot that they do in the background, and we have a bit of advice about what settings potentially to turn on or off, but really the larger trend with the fact that the price is actually coming down, but our usage is growing exponentially.
Absolutely. So let's come to the report. What were your findings on the report? Maybe just to highlight some of the things you found out from, data usage in Kenya.
Sure. So I think the first one is that the appetite for data is not slowing down at any point. So between
by the day.
2014 and now, I mean, we're almost at 1,000 gigabits per second in terms of our internet bandwidth usage. And that's an 100%, 109% increase on 2014. So what that tells you, there's no point that Kenyans are saying, let's use less data, or let's walk backwards. People are saying,
regardless of the cost? Or is that because the costs are coming down?
I think that's because the costs are coming down. I think that's because of accessible devices as well, and better network infrastructure. Now that infrastructure is an investment after all, but it's making it more available. I believe 4G, for example, is available in all of the 47 counties. That's according to Safaricom. So what that tells us is that the infrastructure is there, and that's about getting these affordable devices, which are coming particularly from Shenzhen in China. There's a company called Transsion. They make Techno, Infinix, Itel, Spice. Those are their brands. And they're here tailoring to the African market. Now, the next question is, if it's in your pocket or your purse or your hand, what do you do with it then? The network is there, but do you understand how to participate and how to control your consumption?
Okay, and that now brings in the question of knowledge. Once I have that smartphone, once I have that smart device and I have bought data, for instance, I have bought data, maybe I just want to be on WhatsApp. Because I know on what I've looked at some of the most downloaded apps, and WhatsApp, I'm not surprised it's one of the top ones.
It's number one.
But yeah, it's number one. But there you go. All I want to do is use WhatsApp on it. But are there other possible applications or smart device functions that are taking place in the background that I may not be aware of?
Sure. I mean, the example we give in the report is when you buy a new smartphone. Right, so let's say you want a feature phone before a basic phone. When you unbox that, right, so you open the box, you take it out, you put your SIM card inside. There's a few things it must do immediately that teach you that this device is going to be different from whatever previous one you had. One is for apps like WhatsApp, which you want, you must download them. For every app that's already on the phone, it must basically update itself. It has security and regional settings that it's also getting. And what all these do sometimes is there are kind of like a bit of a shock or an awakening, because somebody is not yet ready for that, but they're in the shop or they're on site, it starts to consume data to just present itself. Now, if you're on WhatsApp specifically, the market now has moved towards where they provide what they call free WhatsApp, meaning that if you purchase a bundle and your bundle data runs out, you have access to WhatsApp that doesn't stop when your data does. And that, for the most populous app as well in the country, is a relief to many, because these text updates are almost a lifeline for people, for business, for family, for some breaking news updates.
It's become our way of communicating with each other.
Correct. And there's a whole type of commerce, what we call WhatsApp commerce, that's been built on top of this. But to us, if you're looking at other apps, WhatsApp with the exception because there's free access, that's now where you've got to be a bit more aware what these apps are doing and when you initiate the app versus when the app is using what we call background data.
Now, with that free access to WhatsApp, is it actually free? Because, I mean, sometimes it feels too good to be true.
I think you're spot on with that. In the report, we've evaluated that it does come with some terms and conditions, specifically the fact that it's only applicable when your bundle is over, meaning that you have to, it says free WhatsApp, but it's not free while you have data. Your data has to end for it to become free. And even then, of course, it's restricted to WhatsApp, and there are some terms and conditions around the total speed, but you will get, of course, all of your updates depending on your choice of network. But that's one of the terms and conditions that might not be clear to people, but it's great in that it allows this lifeline of communication for the country, specifically on smartphones, WhatsApp, to be functional, regardless of whether you have an active bundle or it's just run out.
All right. You've also come up on the report with the 5 S's of what Kenyans are doing online. Indulge us in a little bit on that, on the 5 S's.
Sure. So I think the question, after you set the context of where we are and that our data is going up, you have to look at, well, what are we spending it on? So with Nendo last year, thanks to some research from PwC, we've determined, or they had estimated, and we cite them, that there was almost, or just over 250,000, right? So 269 million gigabytes used here.
Wow.
Right? That was their estimate for what data we'll use. And that's the road to 2022, and there'll be 1 billion gigabytes used in Kenya. I expect that to come sooner. Now, where did they use them? The 5 S's are search, so Google being the most popular search engine. Sport, because the #1 most searched for word is actually SportPesa.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
that's
for Kenya, and that's for the last 3 years running. Then next is social, because right now we have people tweeting the show, tweeting you, tweeting me. You have Facebook as well, which has largely as a social network, if you don't count WhatsApp, it is the largest in Kenya. And then the next S is sex. So sexually explicit content or adult content or pornography, if you will, is a regular pastime in that there's adult websites ranked higher than any other of our regional countries around us.
Wow. Higher than the region?
Higher than, there's no other country that has 2 adult websites in its top 10. Kenya's the only one.
Kenyans, what are you up to? What is wrong?
Anyway, and then last but not least is what's happening now is stories. So Kenyans have a desire for content, and whether it's the vertical format of stories from Snapchat and Instagram stories and Facebook and the like, or this actual content of this interview, Kenyans have an increasing appetite for local material.
All right, now with those 5 S's, what does that tell us about our online habits?
I think it tells us that, one, this is where Kenyans spend this currency. To us, there was no better platform to look at than here, because in truth, you and I might not necessarily tell the truth to a researcher or somebody interviewing us, but if you look to where I spend my bundles, a finite currency, then you learn a lot about me, and there are public sources of information and proprietary, in our case, that we've used to now determine and try to advise Kenyans. So the truth is that if you're thinking about what's important to Kenyans, it's here. If you're any brand organization, all of these are instant, almost instant gratification, meaning that people do not have to wait. So if you're in the service or customer experience or basically in business today, it's that Kenyans are increasingly getting won over by the fact that it's 2 clicks or 2 taps away. So what does that mean for how you implement your experience or your company or your impact and whatever your goal is? In 2019, these things are what count more than anything else.
I mean, analytics are a huge thing right now, and if anybody is thinking of going into business or getting onto online marketing and all that, analytics then definitely come into play. Once we get a hold of this report, for instance, if somebody is in business, how does one percolate this to now maybe think of products to sell, things to avail to Kenyans?
Sure. I think for us, the report is really the starting point of our conversation nationally. One about just megabytes and the currency, the other about how Kenyans can take control, in our case, or understand that it is not necessarily a telecoms network that is making any of the bundles disappear, and it is not that they are basically like the phone is misbehaving, but that they have control. And there are some certain things and settings. For example, Wi-Fi assist, right? So if you turn off that one feature, you're a little bit better or closer along the way. You can install additional apps to control your usage. If you share a phone with friends, family, relatives, and so on, there's an app called Datally by Google where I can basically say, I'm handing Mike my phone. he's got 50 MB because I set it as the limit. And so when those megabytes are done, you can have my phone an hour. But if those megabytes are done, you have to hand it back because it will not allow you to use it past that. So small things like that are what we're trying to present to Kenyans. But you're right, the business impact relies on people taking the full report and then looking at their own enterprise and saying, this is where Kenyans spend their bundles and their time. We want to be online. We want to be available. We want to protect our reputation. What will we do as a response? And we have a couple of provocative thought starters across all of the 5 S's.
All right. The top 10 websites that Kenyans search, what are they?
Sure. So the top 10 websites are, according to SimilarWeb, as of the 1st of January, it's Google in first place. So that's not going to be a surprise to us. In second place is Facebook. So again, the most frequently used social network is second place. Third is YouTube, mentioned stories and the desire for content. So these two, by the way, just the amount of video Kenyans are learning and increasingly consuming, even on their mobile networks, it's becoming one of the go-to things. So it could be that we're exchanging a video on WhatsApp, but more importantly, it's sometimes saying, I'm going to YouTube. I want sports highlights, I want music, I want entertainment, but I'm going to YouTube as a place, a kind of watering hole for me to consume content. Now, in fourth place is currently, I believe, betting, so a sports betting company. And then fifth place, if I'm not mistaken, is an adult website. I don't need to name it on the television. I think people will know how to find it for themselves. They don't need the marketing.
Check it out, yeah.
But that just tells you, at least in the top 5, 6 through 8 are a mix of, so 10th is Twitter, 9th is Google Weblite, 8th is another adult website, and then 7th and 6th are 2 sports betting websites as well.
Okay, and now the fact that, betting, because I also noticed that on the search, we also have sport and there's also, a link to betting. Have Kenyans gotten a new addiction to, 1, being online, and 2, betting, from the statistics that you have?
Sure, I think what we're learning is that it's hard to say that people would be addicted to the internet, even though, especially in urban areas specifically, that is becoming a challenge. So you have video games, you have persistent internet access, you have a young generation who are struggling to find necessarily like their identity outside of a connected device and a camera phone. Addiction, I think, is a big word that would need to be, in many cases, have a medical professional arrive and determine something. Of course, sometimes you and I can see human behavior and arrive at a conclusion ourselves. I think for sports betting now, well, for online, if I could finish, the difference there is that it's a finite resource. Unless you're sitting with a Wi-Fi connection that you pay for every month, and even then, there's what's called fair use. If you pass a certain number of gigabytes every month, you basically cross what they call the fair use rule, which means that they can kind of shave or slow down your internet use, because while it's freely granted to you, there's fair use, meaning that not one user can basically overuse despite it being free. For betting, I think there's 2 sides to it. I think on one hand, it's showing that Kenyans have a real desire to consume content that puts them in a place where they can take that match that they're going to watch this weekend, for example, and be better informed about it. But yes, ultimately, betting comes with its own checks and balances and challenges. And specifically, you mentioned addiction. That can be one. Of course, that also needs to be treated. And I know there's regulation that's been talked about in that sector. I think for us online, there's just no denying its impact, in that it's not just bringing people online, but it's a key place and platform that they're consuming, frequenting, and we can infer they're then spending in accordance with this. So it's not just their megabytes, but ultimately from their pockets and purses and wallets that they will make a decision because of the time they've invested online.
All right. Now, does the report also address internet usage by teenagers and children? Because that's another area I know many Kenyans would be concerned.
Yeah, it does, but at a very high level. I think for us, it was about painting this big picture and making some trends and predictions for 2019 going to 2020. I think for teenagers and for young people, the one area that I and the report talks about is specifically around safeguarding their access online. So we have both some concerns about the ease of access of, let's say, betting or adult material, excuse me, and we have solutions for just looking through the global trends of what's happening. And there are parameters where a person can buy a SIM card off the street and not be able to access any of these two kinds of content until they provide photo ID, either where they bought the SIM card or by sending an image of, this is my driver's license, here's my ID card and number. And here with M-Pesa, many adults will already have another check and balance or any other mobile money platform. That allows us to say, if you do not have this there, we can restrict your access. And the Communications Authority did bring all the telcos to the table to sign something, but we're yet to know a date or timeline or way forward with that to protect young people.
All right, you bring in another interesting aspect that Kenyans need to be wary about, and I wonder if it's addressed in the report, and that's the question of security. Because as we get more online access, we are becoming a very, let me say, internet-based community, even in terms of how you operate your bank, how you do your shopping, everything you do, how you move around your children, whether it's an Uber, whether it's a, whatever. Are we internet or security conscious when it comes to being online?
I think not enough.
Not as we should be.
Not as we should be. And I'll tell you why. I think, Mike, that when you look at how people get online in the first place, we start, and we've been asked about this, why do we start talking about a cyber cafe in the report before we get to talk about the mobile and mobile habits? That's because that's a very key touch point. So there's people who turn 18 and to access their HELB loan, to sign up for their KRA PIN, to just participate in this new economy. The government as well has said e-citizen is the way to go. Huduma centers are the way to go. We're being pushed towards a place where connectivity is giving us access to government or public or various services. Now, the challenge of that is if you take the cyber cafe attendant, they will know your password. Sometimes they're there assisting you. They will have some access because they may be the person. Actually, what we have in the report is people are being charged extra to open some of these various accounts. Now, that brings the question of privacy. My passwords, what's a safe password? It's one thing to have a PIN, a 4-digit PIN that's a secret to you. We see everyone saying, PIN yako ni siri yako, right? But on this side of passwords, we might not take the same kind of care. And that can be a concern where now you have all of these various tools and services, some that are government inclined with government data involved. And the question is, how have we secured them? And with some certain regulation around privacy, is the private sector securing them? We take the lending apps, for example, and how they responsibly report on people who are both basically have a positive credit report or a negative one, or you take even their approaches towards collection. So you have a number of kind of unaddressed larger questions about privacy. We address a number of them, but certainly it would need a report all of its own.
On its own. All right, we need to wind up soon, but first of all, where is this report available? Where can one get it if they need it?
Sure, people can visit Nendo's website. That's Nendo, nendo.co.ke, nendo.co.ke/data. So that's where they'll be able to get the snapshot, which they can take away now, and then the report as well. They can leave their email address and their details, and a free copy will be availed to them of the full report. It's 30+ pages, lots of visuals, and a lot of time and effort has gone into it.
All right, now generally your advice and your closing remarks, but your advice on our data usage. From the clips we started off with, many people seem to think that data just disappears. The truth of the matter is maybe to them it disappears, but maybe there are things that are happening in the background. What's your advice on how we use our data and possibly how to ensure that we're in full control?
Sure, I think the first thing is you don't want any sorts of automatic updates. You want to restrict those or be in control of those. So what that will mean is that you're getting into the Play Store and the settings of your phone, most of them which will be Androids, and you're going to just ask or decide on the phone. Now, when it comes to data, and certain companies and phone manufacturers are getting better at making this the default setting, that you are the one in charge. It will not update on its own. But you want to basically restrict either the app updates or the software and security updates. You want to do them on your time and when it prompts you, as opposed to it happening and you're looking back at your data and you're not being sure where it went. The second, you want to have an app on your phone, if you have the space for it, that tracks your data. Because that's when you have control. Because you can look at your habits and say, I spend what on YouTube? Okay, so I'm using more than I might perceive. Because that's another thing. It is so subjective, Mike. I mean, we can be on the phone here with people, and if we pull up their history and were to show it to them,
you'll be shocked.
and they might be surprised as well, because they weren't sure, because that video, they thought they were just watching a 2-minute video. But as we show in the report, when the video actually has high resolution, it consumes, for a short period of time, consumes a lot of data.
Thank you very much, Mark Kaigwa. We'll have to tie it up right there, and we'll look out to the report and see what else we can glean from there. But thank you for sharing that information with us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, and that's where we wind up the show. It's now 10